Belden, come here.
Okay, Terry, we're ready.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Joining you from two different places today. We've got Terri stay at home, and I'm in our usual spot, our usual studio. Looking forward to chatting with you for a little bit. I think today is going to be a little bit of a short one, and that's okay. Just to catch you up with what things have taken place and update you first on the PPP loans. Yesterday at 10:10 a.m., the government officially announced that they had run out of money. And I saw today that the SBA said that they did 14 years worth of loans in 14 days. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. 14 years of loans in 14 days, just with the PPP. The PPP loans are out of money until when and if our government decides to fund that further. There's about another 260 billion, I think, that they're looking at funding. Officially, the SBA isn't accepting people in to put in for the loans, but you are in a queue. So if you haven't completed your PPP loans and you're interested in that particular loan, I would suggest doing that with your bank, with your banker, and being ahead of the game for when it reopens, if in fact it reopens. But we're think pretty much it's going to. So that's that one. Beginning of next week, we'll have more information for you on the various loans and loan types. I again want to congratulate those of you that have already closed on your loans and received the funding. I spoke with someone again today that was going to have the funds in their account either today or Monday at the latest. They're approved. It's a matter of closing and the funds, changing hands. So I know that's congratulations probably isn't the right word, but it's what allows you to continue to move forward in this crazy time that we have. For those of you that are looking at other things, we'll have an update on what else is available in the CARES Act as we move forward, probably on Monday. As we said yesterday and Wednesday and Monday, we're starting to look toward what's it going to take to get back into the salon, and how are we going to service a guest, and what becomes the new normal. And I'm so glad that we're having that conversation. At the same time, I don't necessarily think we're that close. I really do not anticipate, especially after today's news conference, I don't anticipate us reopening on May 1st. I think the earliest would probably be May 16th. And who knows, probably maybe not that. We had our record day of new cases reported today in Illinois. And, listening to what our president said, he said that he wanted a state to be on the downside. He wanted them to have less cases for 14 days in a row before they were allowed to go into phase one of their reopening. So if in fact that's followed and we move forward with that, I think it is going to be a little time yet. So the question is, how can we use that time? And what do we use that time for? We've talked for a long time about exercising some mindfulness, some you time. I think that's important. I think also it's important to take every single area of your business, every single area of your salon, and think through what it is that you want to do and the changes you want to make. I know that I've seen some salons that are doing complete remodels. I mean, down to the studs. They're doing complete remodels for this reopening. And that's pretty amazing. That's a big endeavor to do during this time. But what a great time to do it if that's your intent, is a complete remodel. Some things that we haven't talked as much about, and Terri, I want your opinion as a guest. as the customer here. How do you feel about the plexiglass that's being put in place in between cash wraps, in between drive-through windows, and so on? Even cash registers in grocery stores, things of that nature. How do you feel about that from a customer standpoint? Is it just accepted now, or in other words, should our salons be thinking about that or considering that? Oh, you're muted, Terri.
I was worried the dog was going to bark. Sorry, everyone. I think that everything's on the table and nothing's off the table right now as far as discussion. What's difficult is, and this is where the two don't match up for me. CVS has a long counter, and very rarely do the service providers need to come around to the front. So for them to have plexiglass, or Walgreens to have the sneeze guard plexiglass there, it makes sense to me. If you think about in your salons how often the front desk is servicing the entire business, that's where it doesn't make sense to me completely. But having masks on, making sure, taking care that extra step to, excuse me, use the disciplines we've talked about in our other presentations, whether it's the iPad as a concierge team and walking the business and having gloves on and so on and so forth. I think that would serve you very well. But just to have it up in one area, but they walk the business everywhere else, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the thing that I think about with that is that the service desk, the reception desk, is the one place in the salon that is absolutely guaranteed to be visited by every guest. Unless you go about it with an iPad. So they're going to come in contact with the most opportunity for passing the virus.
Okay. So can you have a disciplined area so no one, when you're servicing the front desk, you're also not walking the business. You're just staying right there. That could serve you well. I would have a hard time walking the entire business and then walking up behind the plexiglass and thinking, okay, safe now, let's take care of you. That's what I want you to think through.
Well, and I'll give you an example of a business that I'm at that has changed kind of the way they do that. When I go to pick up pharmacy at the Jewel Osco, they used to come to the window, and of course it's separated by a window, so pretty safe environment. But when
you talking about the one inside the store?
I'm talking about the one outside the store, the drive-through.
Okay.
So they've got the little tray that comes out to the car, and they ask for your credit card. But usually at that same time, when they asked for the credit card, they had a clipboard that had 2 pieces of paper for insurances, or had 1 piece of paper for every prescription you were picking up, and they had to be signed off, each piece of paper. Since COVID-19, they no longer extend a clipboard, and no longer is a signature required at that point. And I think that's interesting, because where we're going to have to start to make some calls is how do we move toward a more paperless environment? That was an example of how they moved toward a paperless environment. How do we move toward it? What are the papers? How do we, for example, most guests have a ticket traveler that's started by the service desk, and then it travels with the guest to the styling station, and then it comes back to the service desk when it's done for checkout. Is there a way that can be done electronically? I don't know. And would it be better if it was? But those are questions that could and should be asked right now. Mm-hmm. Terri, just talking to Bernie this morning. Bernie was talking about having people prepay for their services, so that there doesn't have to be that extended interaction with taking a credit card. You take it over the phone, and they pay. Now, again, that's a business preference. It's something for you to think about. It's also can be a different cost involved in that, cost per transaction. Because if you, I mean, the least risk for a credit card company is an in-person handing someone or in-person putting that credit card into the chip reader. That's the least risk. So they give you the best price kind of transaction. As the risk increases, so too does what they charge you per transaction. So
Well, I think I said the other day about CVS, everything was on my side, everything.
mhm.
So once again, I scanned all my purchases, I bagged all my purchases, and I put my card into the reader. And they also encouraged me to clean the reader and my credit card before using it. Okay. Now, maybe we don't want them bagging. Maybe we don't want, I'm not sure what we want to do yet. I don't even know if we want them. I mean, I saw Bernie's email today to us or text saying he's thinking about just putting one product out on the shelf of everything. And then, so nothing has to be touched. This is what we have available. And then someone would retrieve it in the back and bring it up to the guest. Wow. I don't know how, I mean, I think these are wonderful ideas. We have to still make sure we're able to serve at a pace that's acceptable for us to be profitable.
And in a way that is appreciated by our guest.
Oh, no, extra effort, sure.
I mean, the question that I would have, to you about your CVS experience, Terry, is that the items that you brought up to check out with, you had no idea how many other people may have touched that package or those items before you did.
Well, that's why I had gloves on.
Right. And if everyone in the salon, if they're given gloves when they come in, if they're given a mask when they come in, if that becomes the way that we do it, then I think we're in pretty good shape there. However,
And we still might have to be able to put a safety fee down at the bottom.
absolutely agreed.
Right.
Rather than bury it in the cost of service. Because remember, when you put something into the cost of the service and then you pay a commission on top of it, you're actually raising the price of that. You're raising the price. It's not just that flat cost. It's that plus whatever your percentage commission is.
Mm-hmm.
So it increases it. We want to be able to take that cost and pass it directly to the person benefiting from it. So it's done outside of commission, much like we would put sales tax on, or we would put an echo fee for Green Circle salons.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? For those of you that have Green Circle salons, I would think about, because they have a portion, if you're adding that extra to a ticket, part of that is a discretionary fund for you to put towards something in the business. So you might already be charging what you need, but talk to
Green Circle
about it and see.
Yeah, I didn't, and I think I said the other day too, but to reiterate, because of the effort, I was fine with doing what I had to do to participate. It's kind of, I think about after 9/11, and maybe this isn't a good comparison, but traveling before 9/11 versus traveling after 9/11 is completely different. And as a result of going through security and such, and you're going to have those people, and I want to say the word jerk, but I don't feel, I feel bad saying that, but you're going to have those people that throw a fit because of extra security measures were being done for our safety. Now, what are the alternatives? And Steve and I would just look at each other when someone was throwing a fit in line about having to take their belt off, or I don't want to open my bag, or I don't want to do these extra things, or I don't want to stand in line and wait. What are the alternatives right now? We have to be we're in this together. Let's behave properly and support the effort for everyone. And 9 times out of 10, most people, they're going to do their best. Yeah, okay, just a minute.
It's our guard dog. So I know that a lot of you are thinking, you're looking for what's going to be expected. There's a lot of information on every social media channel, on every TV channel. Are we going to have to provide masks? It looks like most certainly you're going to have to provide masks for any of your staff that works in the facility. I think when it comes to a salon experience, I think we're also going to need somehow to provide a mask as well. So it's a whole new category of things. You know, we're certainly thinking about as a distributor, how do we gear up for this on your behalf to have some of these things that you're going to need that were never on your needs list before. I mean, it just wasn't. The amount of hand sanitizer, the positioning of hand sanitizer, the disinfectant.
Surface, yes, the surface disinfectants.
The really, how do you clean your brushes? How do you disinfect your brushes? All of those sorts of things that are going to require more thought, more planning, some dry runs when you get in the salon, to learn the new footprints of success in your business.
Mhm.
So we know you're thinking about those things. It was fun to get that text from Bernie today when he said, "Today I'm thinking about
The front
front
desk.
desk," and that's it. Thinking about the front desk, and you know what? That's probably a really great way to do it. It is the various areas. Think of. I would probably sit down, make a complete list, as complete as you could be, of touch points. What are
I
really
think
all the touch points?
that's a great point. I can remember when the trainers would all go in before a restaurant was open, and that was what I did for many years. And the trainers, because we all knew the footprints, we were very instrumental in saying, you know, where are the menus going to be stored for efficiency? Where's the best place to put the phone? How's the coat check? How are we going to facilitate the crowds around the coat check room? How are we going to understand how we're going to move people around in this small area during the high traffic points of the dinner hour and so on and so forth? That's everyone just coming together and walking it and saying, what would be best? Where should it be? What ways should the doors open? Which ways should the doors close? All based on efficiencies. That's what we're asking you to do right now, is to really examine, because where are you going to store these masks? Where are you going to store these maybe disposable gowns? Where are you going to place these gloves so it doesn't look like an afterthought, but a prepared thought? And remember, we have sometimes, even when salons are built and we say, okay, where are you keeping your common area for all your styling products? And they'll say, oh, we're just gonna put something right here. This shouldn't be an afterthought, like we're just gonna put something right here. We have to prepare for this, because this will be the new way we gather the items to service the guest, and it should be very easy. When you think about a galley in the restaurant, you know, the service galley or the service alley, where are the coffee cups, because they're a high moving item? Where are the water glasses? All of that is thought out of, not just because it's something like, well, that they would fit there. What is used the most, and how are we creating less steps? Like when Steve said, the steps of the service for success. Where are we putting? The last place you want to put a coffee cup is in the furthest away in the alley. It's the same thing. Where are you going to put all of these things? There's a, gosh, what restaurant is it? Wait a minute. Roadhouse, Texas Roadhouse. So when you walk into Texas Roadhouse, the hostess is responsible for taking the pre-wrapped utensils to the table. So she'll say 4 of you, and she'll bring the 4 wrapped in linens and the menus, and she'll walk you to the table. Now, they didn't just throw those. Where are they going to put those so the hostess can maximize her footsteps on the way to the table? So where are you going to put everything to maximize? These are other things that have to be obvious to the customer. It has to be almost a presentation of safety, and it needs to be in a very organized, specific way.
And you know, I think
And I wouldn't put them where they put them at the restaurant.
right, and they may not when they come back into business and they start seating people, who knows? But see, we do have an advantage right now in the little bit of time that you go out for necessities. You are interacting with businesses that have already had to answer some of these questions that you're going to have
Watch
to
how they're doing it.
move forward. And so it's one of those times where you've got to be observant, see what feels right to you and what doesn't feel right. See what you're grateful for from that business and the way they handled you and treated you versus when was it just, yeah, that might have been a good idea, but terrible execution.
Well, let me give you an example. I have not been out. So CVS, I think that's the only place I've gone MPSC in a month. I mean, honey, am I wrong on that?
I can't think of another.
Place I've been. But here's what I mean about absolutely helping the guest understand your commitment. If a business right now at their take-home areas are double bagging for safety and surface touching and so on and so forth, they should say that when they present to you when you pick up. They should say, and we have doubled or triple bagged this for your safety, and hand it to you. Not just do it, but present it as a way to say, this is how our commitment to service you. So don't do service in silence. Do this during this time. Learn how to speak about it while you're doing it.
And you know, I can say just with a recent experience, I was in Target last night to get a couple of things that were necessary at home for Terry's mom and being able.
Oh, and I want to share what that is, because I think there's some play on that even in our businesses. You know,
Well,
last night, go ahead. You go first.
Okay. The interesting experience of the store is that here's this, you know, Targets are big. And I was in there the last maybe half hour of their business at the night. I got there about 8:25 and they close at 9 o'clock. I saw people in the exchange and return area. I saw some people that worked there saying goodbye to other workers that were getting off a little bit earlier. I saw some people that were maybe walking the store, stocking a shelf, getting ready to start their shift, who knows. But I didn't see anybody to ask questions of. There really wasn't. I was looking for things that I was very unfamiliar with looking for. So I wound up walking the entire store. And after I walked the store, then I had to go somewhere and find somebody who I could ask a question to. And that was in the returns area. I could see people in the, somebody behind the desk. And I had to wait in line to get to the returns person. And I said, do you have this or this or this? And she looked it up and she was very polite. But here's something that was so funny. I kept hearing, while I'm in line, I kept hearing this horn beeping outside. And so finally, while she's waiting on me, somebody else from Target walks behind me and she says, oh, will you take care of the drive up for me? I was going to, but I forgot. And so here was somebody out the drive up, which they had for safety reasons.
Beep,
Order
beep.
ahead. They were there. They'd already let somebody know they were there. The young lady who was waiting on me had acknowledged them, forgot to take out their order, and just went on with the line of people that was in front of her. And they were desperately trying to get somebody. So my point is they might have had a really nice system designed, but it got lost in the execution. And do you think that person beeping the horn thought it was a nice system? Do you think they felt serviced or not serviced? Those are interesting things that can happen. And I'll give you the other side of that. As I stepped away from that counter, there was the announcement that comes overhead that says, Target shoppers, we're closing in 10 minutes. Please make your final selections and pay for your things, and we'll reopen tomorrow. And so I was lucky. I was pretty close to the cash wrap. So I get there and there's only 2 or 3 people ahead of me. All of a sudden, I hear this lady in back of me say, honey, you better call somebody else because the line's going all the way down the store. And I looked up and my God, it was. It was going all the way down. It was 30, 35 people deep, and there were 2 cash wraps. I was at one of them, and the other one was crazy.
You know, I remember when that happened to us in Vegas, and very late at night at 2:30 in the morning, and the line was very long. And I went over to the manager who was sitting comfortably at his desk, and I said, "Do you see this line over here?" And I said, "It's not my job to tell you that. It's your job to see it. That we're waiting too long, and we need some additional help out here." And you know what was really strange about that is, remember, there was a check-in area and a checkout area. Remember?
And the
And they
check-ins
had,
would check in, and the checkouts would only check out. And at
yeah,
midnight, people are checking out.
well, who's checking out at 2 in the morning? So I went over to those girls. I said, are you cross-trained to check in? Yes, but we're only doing checkout. I said, but you don't have anyone in line. Why aren't you helping ease the pain of this operation? So sometimes you have to help people not stand in the right place, but look for the right things.
But see, here's what's amazing about the experience from last night. When that sound comes on, there were other people in the store that could man a cash register, right? Because they got there, but then the line was already nuts and people were already uncomfortable. But if that's coming on over the overhead, people should immediately go to, the people that work there should immediately go to the cash wraps. So the point is that they're working new systems there. You will have new systems in your business. Let's look for what's right, what's wrong, what feels good, what doesn't. Let's look for what was, what didn't they have to deal with? They didn't have to deal with doors because the doors are automatic. You will have to deal with doors in your businesses, and not just doors, not just the glass, but the handles and anywhere where people would touch, what the touch points are. And they're not going to get disinfected by accident. If there's not a plan in place, if there's not a person responsible for that plan, if you haven't taught the people that are responsible for how to do that, then you've missed, you kind of have missed it. And I would worry about that. I would really worry about your people feeling safe when they come in to be serviced. And that's going to be a big deal to a lot of people. I saw, I don't even think I told you this, Terry, but I saw a post on one of the stylist forums on Facebook the other day. And I even think it was one of our clients that raised it. I think it was Lisa Marie that asked the question. And she said, if the governor or if your state said today that we could go back to work in the salon May 1st, would you feel safe? So it was to this whole forum. And there were hundreds of responses. I want to say there were probably 600 responses at that time. Today, there's probably 1,000. But I had to look and see what were people saying. I'll tell you that there wasn't more than 10% of the hairdressers that responded in that who said they felt safe. 90% of the people who responded said they didn't feel safe. Not just no. I mean, there were people that said no with emphasis, said no with swear words. It was clear how they were feeling about it. And you didn't see very many people on the other side of that equation.
Well, let's go back and look at the reality checks of this. I mean, what happens if your salon never really was that committed to sanitation? Some salons are very finicky about it, and others, it's not at the top of their list or their radar. Would I feel safe in that environment? Absolutely not. So let's go back and look at a couple things. First of all, many times when we start a conversation saying, let's start at the guest and work backwards to all of us, right? But the people that are going to be providing service, make sure you're spending time equally on how do I make my guest feel safe and how do I make my team feel safe, both.
Yeah, and Terry, what I was going to say to that is that right now, of the guests, how at PSC we always teach that there's 3 guests, right? The obvious guest, the one that sits in your chair. Then your team is also guest to each other. And then there are the people who service the salon in one fashion or another, the mailman, the UPS man,
The distributor. Yeah.
the distributor, all of those are also guests to the salon. Well, the only guest that you get to be in contact with right now really is your staff. Right now, it's one guest that you have that you can put on a Zoom call, that you can put on a Microsoft Teams call, and talk about
Safety.
yeah, talk about safety. Coming out of this, it's going to be so important. And again, we've said this, but you have a safety and sanitation pledge to your guest. And
So
more
you might,
to your guest, all three, right? So,
Mhm.
for example, are we going to give people masks when they come in? I think they're going to mandate that. Well, what about our third customer? What about if your distributor comes in and they're not wearing a mask? Well,
please put one on.
they have to have a mask.
Mhm.
If that's the way the salon is, we can't look the other direction and say, oh, that's just Steve. Oh, that's just Terri. You know, we can't look the other way on those things. So when a pledge is a pledge, a promise is a promise. What is going to be your service and sanitation promise to your guest? And do you mean it? Because
Well,
you
and
will be tested, and your people right now, if that little, blip on Facebook got that kind of a response,
that's a great indicator.
there's a whole generation of stylists out there that aren't ready to come back. And we've got to get from now until when we do, absolutely convincing them that they're in good hands and having systems that they can trust and count on and know that we're going to be there right beside them and work this until we get it right. Or as Robert says, we're going to work it until we can't get it wrong. So that's what I'm thinking. It still comes down to a lot of getting ready for the future. I sent out to some salon owners today, and we're going to post it. I hope the plan is to post it on our Facebook page sometime today. But Barberside, it's so funny. I was talking to Bernie after he sent that. He said, "Have you seen Barberside's things?" Well, I have, and what I want you to know about that is at barberside.com, there's a certification program that many of you have already taken advantage of. But if your whole team hasn't taken advantage of it, insist on it. Have them do that in their time. You'll get a certificate. That certificate can be put in your salon that says you've been trained in that sanitation, that sterilization of implements and tools, barberside.com. And we got to talking, and I said, Bernie, my dad's company used to sell Barberside. And he said, yeah, he's used it for years. And he said, I didn't realize they had so many products. And I said, you know what? They're not all that new, because those are products that my dad's company sold. Those are products that I used as a kid. Those are products.
So how did they lose their popularity?
Well, you know what? It's a good question. I think sanitation in salons, as volume and speed happened, sanitation took a back seat. I mean, for example, when you had a weekly guest and they were going to be underneath the dryer for X amount of time, and you had to have a constant supply. And yeah, they weren't expensive brushes like we have today. There were no Mason Pearson brushes really back then. But there were things like a wrist saver that you used for back combing and things like that. And a salon might have dozens and dozens of these brushes, and there were dozens of them in a soaking solution to be sterilized while they were using the dozens that were already sterilized and ready to use. They were fresh and returned. It was commonplace to see a dry sterilizer in a salon. Now, dry sterilizers today, back then, we sold formaldehyde tablets. And so formaldehyde is not a friendly thing in a salon these days, never really has been. But until they find something different to sterilize with a dry sanitizer, it's probably probably going to have to be soaking those brushes. It's going to have to be a different way. I know that when we first had schools, we had our future professionals would put their Paul Mitchell 413 styling brushes in the Barbicide solution and soak them. And the Barbicide loosens the glue that keeps that cushion on the brush. And so it would ruin the brushes. And because Barbicide was never made to work with brushes. Barbicide was made to work with combs. So
Well,
there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to do. And Barbicide, what I started to say is we're gonna have Barbicide's getting ready to go back to work document, which is really well thought out. It's totally only from their point of view, from sanitation, which is kind of where we need to be right now. But I think it's really well written and good information. So hopefully you can download it.
The reason this topic is so important is it's going to really take a shift in the mindset of the staff. I mean, think about the arguments that salons have about making sure we have enough towels. I mean, can you imagine how the conversation is about sterilization, making sure we've disinfected, making sure we have gloves on, making sure, I mean, towels would set people right into orbit. Now we're going to add all these other things that have to be done. This is why this takes a lot of conversation and a commitment, and no one's bigger than the rules on this topic. Nobody.
And you've got gowns and capes. If you think of the gowns and capes, there are some salons that have always had a ladies' room, or the powder rooms also be dressing rooms, and they've had customer gowns and so on hanging in the powder room.
Public area. Yeah,
that's not going to happen.
Nope.
I know that there's a lot of conversation right now about disposable capes. Are we going to go to disposable capes instead of having to have a freshly sanitized cape? How many capes would you have to use a sanitized cape on every guest? So it just might be a disposable cape that comes to the front in this situation.
And yet we're not comfortable with it, but other businesses are very comfortable with disposable things. I mean, I think about the doctor that you never get to enjoy, Steve, but the women on this call will understand. And I would love to have a blanket, right? But I can't have a blanket. So I have to have a paper sheet. Well, and I've said this many times, by the time the doctor arrives, I've got it all ripped up and it's in shreds and everything. But I'd prefer a blanket, but I know for safety and sanitation, I have to have a paper sheet and a paper vest and a paper. So this isn't foreign. It's foreign to us. It's not foreign to people that have had sanitation standards.
Mm-hmm.
Too much information.
Yeah, that's.
But it's relatable. I can say that it's relatable.
So I think as we look forward on those things, there's more topics. We have to totally dissect the topic of take-home products.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I would recommend doing either a survey monthly.
We have a bad connection at this moment.
Survey asking your staff for the top three. Survey. You didn't hear the top 3 things for safety.
There you go.
Did you get it?
You're back now, but we really heard none of what you just said.
Okay, I'm sorry. So maybe you put a word out to your staff and maybe Survey Monkey.
Okay,
I'm gone again. Really?
Yeah,
just asking them the top 3 things that they would want in place to feel safe. Okay.
Okay.
Wait, there I am. Am I there?
You're back now.
Okay, so I'm just going to say quick. Do a survey and ask your staff the top 3 things that they need in place to feel safe. And then that'll give you a bunch of great ideas for them. And many of those ideas will probably transfer over to the guests feeling safe as well. Okay, hurry up, Steve.
All right. So lots of different ways.
Good. Did you get all that?
SurveyMonkey is out there to be used. So is Google Forms. It's part of the Google Suite that's out there that you can use for nothing. That'll bring all that information back to you. So it's possible. I like that idea, Terry, of saying, especially to the people. I'm thinking of that big group of people that got on that Facebook post and said, we don't feel safe going back to work yet. Let's find out, what is it about going back to work that they don't feel safe about? What needs to be in place?
Well, what are the whys? Why?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So as we move forward in this, we're going to be talking about take home and how do we handle that? How much can e-commerce help with that or not? I know that many of you have done a kind of a small commitment to that during this time. I know that the whole idea of curbside delivery it's not allowed in some places. It's being done in most places, but certainly not allowed in some places. So I would just say we need to think about that topic in general. You've got to.
Well, I think we covered that on Monday.
Yeah, we'll cover it on Monday. But you got both sides of the thing to think about. Do we just put a small image display out and then take their order and fill it in the salon? Do we leave it as it was? Or do we do some combination of e-commerce and live pickup as we move forward?
And the other thing we're going to be starting on is a detailed checklist. I don't want it to be too detailed. I want it to be topic checklist and allow you to personalize it to your business. So we'll probably start rolling that out on Monday's call and just continue to add to it to give you, for those of you that are visual.
Yeah, checklist and a timeline. I think really a timeline for coming back as well, Terri, would be. Okay, so thank you so much for spending this time with us. We miss all of you terribly. I mean, from our staff to those of you that are our clients, I miss the buzz of this business that just isn't here right now. Even Jack's been with me to do some of his e-learning, our son, and first thing he says when he walks in is, why is it so dark and why is it so quiet?
And you know what he said to me last night? I know that people really like seeing me on there. And he calls it YouTube, right? He said, I know the people.
He said, Dad, I was on YouTube for the first time
in my life. And he said, I think I need to make a regular.
You must have heard.
I think I need to make a regular appearance.
Jack, are you going to come up?
Wait, on YouTube.
Hurry up. We're just about done. Yeah.
The camera for you.
You got to hurry up. Camera's right.
Yes.
Wait, where's the
You going to say hi? You going to tell people have a nice weekend?
Oh, is this the you?
There's the camera.
That's YouTube.
Hi, honey.
Hi.
Do you see your mother?
Everyone, it's me again from
Hi.
April 15th.
It's the 17th.
From when I was
Please.
on tape
Oh, it's
at the end of the video last time, and we're doing it again. Remember, I'm the son of my dad and mom.
Hey, and do you see your mother? Do you see your mother?
I sure do. Is that gonna be?
Yeah, it's going to go to YouTube. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We miss
See
you,
you.
and we'll see you
I hope you.
on Monday.
Bye, all the sweet people watching this. We have a good time watching me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sweeties.
Bye.